I've been setting goals for years. I've used planners, I've done the whole SMART goals thing, I've kept journals. In fact, I was cleaning up recently and I found this old journal here, and this is what inspired this video. At the beginning of every one of these journals, I would write out 10 SMART goals. And when I look back on them, I didn't actually do any of these, not one of them. And it's not because I was sitting around not doing anything. I just always had a lot going on. I had a business I was running, doing online stuff, workshops, and now conferences even. But somehow, these goals I was writing down, they would always just fall off. So eventually got to ask yourself, what am I missing? What do I actually have to do to follow through on goals? Or how do I set goals that I will actually follow through on? What I've learned is that the answer, for me at least, wasn't usually about trying harder. It was to start with intentions first. And really what that is, you just kind of name what it is that you actually want or what you need. And then you can set smaller goals that match that or filter through that. And I know for some of you that's obvious. Some of you do that. But I just don't think that it's intuitive for most of us. And just to be clear, I'm not revealing any ancient wisdom here. I'm not inventing some new concept. People talk about intentionality all the time. And the thing is, I think it stays kind of vague. It's just this buzzword. And there's no clarity on what that actually means. So what I'm trying to do in this video is show you what being intentional actually looks like in real life and how you might use intentionality to achieve your goals. Because for me, again, the issue was never about lack of effort when it came to my goals. But what I finally realized after years of doing goal setting and not achieving my goals is that what I was doing is I was setting should goals, things that I should be doing, but they weren't things that I actually wanted to do. There were things like, do this particular activity every single morning. And the only reason I wrote those down is because I heard some podcaster somewhere saying that that's what they do. So I thought I should do that as well. And I'll be in a better situation than I currently am. So, and just to be clear, I don't have all this figured out. I'm still learning about all this myself. But I've come to a place where I finally realized that for me, setting intentions before any kind of goal is far more powerful, and it leads to a more productive business. Now, I do think goal setting is important. I'm not anti-goal. Like I said, I've been doing it for years, and I've always been somewhat goal-oriented, sort of. I'll get to that in a minute, but my point is, I don't think that goal setting is intuitive for most people. Most of us just kind of stumble into the work that we're doing, and we take it one day at a time. And there's also something that happens that we don't really think about, or maybe we just don't want to admit it, but you actually have to care about that same goal months later after you wrote it down, even if things in your life have changed or shifted a bit. When I look back at some of the goals that I wrote down in these books, I can honestly say it wasn't because of lack of effort. That's where that whole should goal thing that I talked about earlier comes in. I was setting goals based on what sounded right. You can write the most ambitious thing down. You can make them sound all smart and fancy. You can even convince yourself that you actually want it. But if I'm being completely honest, when I really dug into the why behind those goals, I knew that I didn't actually want what it was that I was writing down. In some cases, I wasn't even willing to do the things that I knew it would take to get me there. And with goals like this, these should goals, it would come time to do the actual work, but then, you start to procrastinate, or you kind of conveniently forget, or you just start making excuses. Or like if you're like me, you just kind of talk yourself out of doing what it takes. And I think that happens when you're trying to force yourself to chase a goal that you didn't even choose for the right reasons in the first place. For example, one of the goals that I wrote in this book was start a personal project by Q2. And I think that sounds great in theory, but when I was writing the details of that goal down, what it would actually take to get there, I wrote down that I didn't even know what the personal project was yet. It was just part of the steps that I would do to figure out what that personal project might be. And one of the things was, start storyboarding ideas. So looking back, That goal of starting a personal project was actually a should goal. I knew that I wanted to start a personal project because I heard other people doing it and I had some friends that were doing it. And I thought that it would be cool to have one. But I don't think that I really wanted one. I think that I just wanted the benefits that I thought could come from having a personal project. And that's what I mean when I say should goals. They sound good. They might even make sense in the moment, and you can even convince yourself that it's the right move, but they don't often last. So what changed for me was this. Before I set goals, I try to get very clear on what my intentions are first. Goals can be kind of rigid. They're supposed to be measurable. The good ones are often time oriented, like do this by this date. But intentions are more like a general direction. They're kind of like a filter of some sort that you can put all your decisions through. They help you answer questions like, what do I actually need or want right now? And the thing is, if you don't start there with that understanding of what you want or what you actually need, you might default back to those should goals. And that's what we're trying to avoid here. You'll go back to that same habit of setting goals that sound impressive, or goals that you think are going to somehow fix your life, or goals that you picked up from somebody else's routine. I'm definitely guilty of that. But those don't usually work because they're not connected to who you are as a person, your actual tendencies, your strengths, and all that. They don't really connect to what you actually want or what you need. And again, I know intentionality, it's kind of a buzzword. It's like this artsy-fartsy thing that people say, but I'm not talking about anything woo-woo here. I'm just talking about simply getting some clarity on what it is that you want or what you need. Asking yourself real questions, simple questions, but questions like, what do I actually want this year? What do I actually need right now? What kind of a life am I trying to build? What kind of person am I trying to become? And once you name that, the goals you set from there tend to make way more sense. And they're way easier to follow through on because they align with your why. So for example, in this older journal, before I started doing these, I had a goal to photograph the most expensive home in my area, or, work for the most prestigious architect in my market. And again, you have to ask yourself, why do we actually want these things? Do we think that everyone is going to come out of hiding and start flocking to us and want to work with us? Because it doesn't really work that way, if you hadn't noticed yet. So again, just keep on asking why until you've really gotten to the root of what it is that you want. Because once you find that real why, your intention becomes a lot clearer. And then you can start to turn those ambitions into actual goals, practical goals that make sense for you. Now, some of you might have a little bit of hesitancy on this whole intention thing, and I totally get it. It is a little artsy-fartsy, even though I said it's not. It kind of is. So here's something that's a little bit more practical and a little less philosophical, something that requires a little less soul searching. A few years ago, a friend of mine was setting themes for his years. He would call it like the year of the inject whatever adjective you want. And so long before I started doing this whole intention stuff, I would quietly pick a theme. I didn't write it down or make a big deal about it. I would just kind of choose a theme, something that felt like what I really needed, that I wanted to strive for. And the whole reason I like the theme, by the way, is because it still works like a filter. Instead of having, 10 goals, you have one general direction, and it makes decision making a lot easier. Back when I was doing primarily real estate photography, I remember one year was the year of scaling for me. And that's the year that I finally decided to bring on another photographer and kind of let go of bringing all the income in. But eventually I realized that a theme alone wasn't really getting to the deeper thing that was driving me. For me personally, that's where my faith comes into it. Now, I'm not going to get all preachy on you, but I started reflecting a lot on the way that I was living my own life. And there was this passage from First Thessalonians that really resonated with me. And there's this line in there about making it your ambition to lead a quiet life. because I had spent years being loud. You guys know, you've seen me. Had all these YouTube videos. I was doing all this education stuff, trying to make a name for myself, trying to do all the things that would help me get new clients. So ever since reading that verse a few years ago, my intention has changed. It's been to make it my ambition to lead a quiet life. And I haven't done it perfectly, and I'm obviously making a talking head video again. But even these videos, they're quiet in the sense that I'm not like trying to be loud or flashy. I'm just sharing what I've been thinking about for whoever wants to listen. Simple as that. Now, here's how all this goes back to what I've been talking about here. So back then, I wanted a personal project because I thought that I should have one. But this time, I actually wanted to make something because I felt that it fit my intentions. That's really the only difference. So if you only take one thing from this video, do this. Don't start with goals or ambition. Start with whatever your intentions are, or at the very least, if you don't want to get all deep, just start with a theme. Then you can make goals that are smaller and more achievable, that are actually aligned with that intention or theme. And honestly, if all you do is just get clear on whatever that intention is first, you're already ahead of where most people are when it comes to goal setting and actually achieving goals, because you can make a lot of decisions just from having that filter of intentionality alone. Okay, so I've gone on a lot about intentions and themes and all that. Here's how you can actually use it. So I would suggest take 10-15 minutes to literally just sit down with a notebook or notes, whatever you use, and try to get to the real why. Figure out what you actually want or what you actually need right now. Or at the very least, pick a theme if you don't want to get deep. And once you know what your intention is or your theme is, you're going to start to notice things as you start to explore what goals you want to achieve. A lot of those goals that you used to think about that you thought you wanted, they suddenly become smaller goals and more achievable goals that are more aligned with the intention. So instead of asking, what should I do now? You're going to start asking questions to yourself like, what supports this intention? And that's really the whole shift. It's pretty simple. All right, so in summary, here's the process. First thing, write down your intention, just one sentence. Then you're going to write down 3 to 5 little micro goals that actually support it. But you don't want more than that. You don't want 10 or 20. You just want like 3 to 5. And then the third thing is you're going to make sure that each micro goal has a next step that you can actually do, preferably this week in the next day or two, ideally. Because if you don't have a next step, it's not really a very good goal yet. It's kind of just an idea of something you think sounds good. And again, we're trying to avoid that. So if your intention is something like surrounding stability, your micro goals might be to simplify your pricing, or reach out to a couple of your clients that you haven't talked to in a while this month, just to say hi. Nothing fancy, no whatever. Just you want to do simple things that move the needle. That's the point. When you have a micro goal that's actually aligned with what you want, and when they're filtered through this intention, it's very powerful because you stop chasing random things that just kind of sound good, and you start doing things that are actually supporting where you're trying to go. So bringing it back to the question, how do you set goals that you'll actually follow through on? I would suggest that you start an intention, or at the very least a theme. And make sure you're asking yourself if you actually want this, or is this just a should goal that you've adopted? Again, you can get into that pattern even after you're clear on your intention. And sometimes the most productive thing you can do is delete a goal, not because you're quitting, but because you're just doing an alignment check and you're just getting honest with yourself. So what's one intention that you want to live by this year? Leave it in the comments and I will respond with a couple of micro goal ideas that will maybe help you get the wheels turning. Just remember that no matter what I write, it has to align with your actual needs.